Okay, you're on, David. And if you're there, Jonathan. Oh, Jonathan, you're back. You're back, Jonathan. Okay. Okay. There's a lot of people. We're already way above our quoted normally. It's fantastic. This is really good.
How many have we got, Ron?
We're up over 30 at the moment, so it's good.
I'm paying for about 15 of those. So.
It had better been good, David.
I know.
I have high expectations.
You're competing with the football,
Yeah.
Well, they want to see a person who started on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Yeah. What I'm going to do, David and Jonathan, if it's okay with you, I'll just very soon, because we're on a tight schedule with the footy and other stuff. Jonathan, do you think I should I mute everyone right now?
All right, and we'll go.
Get started, is that right? And I'll mute all, except I've got I'm muting all, and then I've got to and David and Jonathan, if you can unmute yourselves. And Luke Molan, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
All right. All right,
and
well, good evening.
Yeah, sorry, Jonathan. Yeah, go.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome our esteemed treasurer, David Judge, to the lectern. He's going to give us a talk this evening on his adventures sailing on the TS Pagora, which apparently went from South Africa to Poland. And David assures me that TS stands for tall ship, not training ship or twin screw. So just before we hand over to David, a few housekeeping kind of things. If you've got some insightful comment you want to make, pop it in the chat section, and David will monitor those as he goes and attempt to answer your questions. If you want to react to something, apparently you can click the reactions button and he will see your hand show up. Otherwise, I think we'll kick off and let David start.
Thanks for that, and yeah, welcome everybody. And so, just going to run through a bit of a presentation that it's kind of interesting. This actually happened almost 30 years ago. So didn't have digital cameras in those days. So been doing a bit of scanning and getting everything together, and of course, not having digital cameras, it didn't take as many photos as you would. So fairly brief, but anyway, let's have a go. So I'm just going to start. So yeah, sailing the Atlantic, both the South Atlantic and the North Atlantic, and as you might think, that is the tall ship Pagora, which is a Polish ship, and the story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So the beginning, why was I in South Africa? And why was Pagora in South Africa? The middle, okay, we're going to talk about the voyage from Cape Town to Poland. And then the end, what happened after we arrived into Poland? And also an interesting question, how did this voyage lead me to joining Hobson's Bay Yacht Club? So there's actually a little bit of a connection there as well. So it's all in there. So first of all, what was I doing in South Africa? I had been in England doing the backpacking thing. I didn't want to come back to Australia at that time, but I wanted to avoid winter in England. So I had been working in travel in England. So I had met South Africans. I tried out some South African beer, and I knew it was pretty good. So went and did a bit of backpacking around South Africa. So as I mentioned, the year was 1991 when I first got down there. An interesting time. They were just leading up to the referendum about the blacks having a vote over there. So it was an interesting time to be there. So hitchhiking, yeah, it was an interesting experience. And also going in sort of like the locals taxis where you had to really be jammed in there. Certainly with the hitchhiking, the local whites were saying, "What the hell are you doing?" And we would generally get picked up very quickly because they said, "Well, I can't believe you're doing this." So And a lot of the times we got picked up in the back of a ute and taken him out. I should point out at this point, I went down there by myself, but you stay in youth hostels and you meet people. And in fact, that's where I met Luke, who does feature during this story. I think that's his knee there as well. So we'll talk about that. So I landed in Johannesburg and ended up in Cape Town via the hitchhiking, did some silly things like bungee jumping, as you do. Not too sure about the safety standards in South Africa, but anyway, lived to tell the story. So that's sort of what I was doing. I was just you know, traveling around and being a backpacker. So it was good times. So Pagoria, it is a tall ship, and you'll see the different types of tall ships there, and you can sort of see the different types. And the Pagoria itself is a barkentine. You can see how it's got the foremast has square sails on it, and then the other ones not. So we would actually climb the mast to work with these sails. So you certainly went up aloft quite a long way, and we had 5 ones in there. So that was a tall ship. I had experience with tall ships before I got to South Africa. I'd done some in WA, so that certainly helped. And a ship fairly similar to Pagoria. Luke, he had actually sailed to South Africa from Darwin, I think, yeah. So, but he hadn't been on a tall ship, so that was interesting. So Pagoria itself was part of a Canadian class afloat thing, where students would go on board the ship for I think up to 6 months at a time. And so it was sort of where they did their education and they were experiencing life and things like that, a bit like, you know, Timber Top and so forth that they have in Geelong. So it was a lot of Canadians, and it actually been quite a successful program, so much so that Pagoria was getting a little bit small for it, and so they were building another ship which is called Concordia. And I want you to remember that name because that appears at the end. So so Pagoria, the contract for Pagoria had finished because this new ship was being built. So in effect, the ship was in Cape Town, and it was a very unique sort of situation. We needed to deliver the boat back to Poland, where it was from. So because it was a delivery, it was a lot more sort of casual, and they didn't sort of have the normal crew on board as well. So in Cape Town, I found out about Pagoria. I must have read a newspaper, and there was an article about the ship there. At the time, it was in a place called Hout Bay. And so Luke and I hopped on a bus, and you know, you just went. I just said hello. I actually had a picture of the tall ship that I'd sailed in Perth with me to show them, and at that point they were looking at doing some day sails, so they're actually very keen to have some people come on board. And I think I gave Luke a crash course in tall ship sailing on the bus on the way there, but he managed to bluff his way around. And so after the first day, they said, why don't you come and live on board? So both Luke and I, who had been staying in youth hostels all the time, we got to stay on board Pagoria in Hout Bay for about a month or so. And then the ship moved around to the waterfront area of Cape Town. So I'll find out later if anyone's been to that waterfront area. But yeah, so we were staying on there, and they just wanted us to do 1 hour sort of night watch each time. So it was just a brilliant sort of thing as a backpacker to be staying on the ship and enjoying going out sailing, and also just learning to meet all the Polish crew as well. But after a bit of time, they were sort of waiting for the weather to be better up in the Northern Hemisphere before leaving. So after a while, it was time to go to Cape Town. There's a good-looking crew member there, isn't it? So you can sort of see up on the top of the up on one of the yards there, and that would be something we'd do quite regularly at the top there. Okay, and so going on to the route, how do we get back to Poland? And at this point, I'm actually going to I'm going to switch, and I thought we'd go to a better way of describing the route and using a bit of Google Earth. So hopefully this is coming up okay for you. So we can see Cape Town down the bottom here. And the way we were going, the first stop is a place called St. Helena. And you can sort of see how it's in the middle of the South Atlantic. So just a little dot in the spot there. And we'll talk about that as we come through. Then the next stop was Ascension Island. So not as far away to go there. And then going up, we can see Africa off to the right. And then our next stop was the Azores, which is the longest leg that we did. Then we went through the English Channel and to a place called Kiel, which is in Germany. And I'll just sort of go out a little bit here. We actually went through a canal. It's very faint, but there's actually a canal through there. So instead of having to go over the top of all this landmass, it's actually a very popular thing, like the Suez Canal sort of thing. And then the last stop was into Poland itself. And I won't even try and pronounce that, but that's where we ended up in there. So that's sort of the overall of where we went. So let's get back to the PowerPoint. So I'll just show you that. Okay, so that's it. So going back to the crew who was on board, the ones in red are the Polish ones, and then the green ones are the locals, which I'll explain. I think that this is pretty approximate. So we had a captain, a first mate, second mate, watch officers. So we had 3 watches, which covered the 24 hours. I was on the 12 to 4 watch. So every day I was on watch from 12 noon to 4 p.m. and then at midnight to 4 a.m., which got a bit of a drag after a while. But and normally you would get a bit of a rotation happening with that, but they decided not to rotate. So that was it. Bosun, a couple of engineers, 2 cooks, and a doctor. Varying levels of English with those crew as well. So they were good. We then had 3 watch leaders. Luke was one, I was one, and we had another guy, Simon, I think, and had about 12 general hands. And the general hands were basically backpackers. We sort of pressed gang people to come along on this trip just to make up the numbers. So if you can imagine being in South Africa and go, oh, here's a trip to get back to Europe. And I think we paid, Luke and I think we paid $5 a day. So,
a day, yeah.
Yeah, it was $5. I think the others may have paid a bit more, but yeah, we were paying $5. So
I think they were 10 or 20 a day.
10 or 20, yeah. So anyway, it's still good value for the experience, and it was a couple of months to go there. And that voice was Luke, who was on the ship there. So departure time, you can see we had quite a few people coming to watch there, and we're all sort of making sure that we left. And I'm just going to highlight this person here because this person appears in the story very shortly. Okay, so from Cape Town to St. Helena, and here is actually Luke. He's steering the ship there. The steering position was actually quite interesting. It was really quite protected, and you had this sort of like a rope seat that you could sit in there. So that was quite a nice little spot there. So it took 10 days to get to St. Helena, and those sailors would like to know 1,710 nautical miles, 7-knot average trade wind sailing. Because we left and just hopped into the trade winds, and it was actually really nice sailing until we had a man overboard. And now, not only a man overboard, you can see that I've highlighted this area here. Can you see how these ropes are broken? Okay, and this wood here is broken. That guy that I highlighted before, he was in my watch, and before we left Cape Town, he didn't go up the mast. He didn't feel comfortable about doing that. And, you know, you can't force anybody to go up there. I said, that's fine. You know, later on the trip, we'll do that. He was seasick quite badly for the first probably 5 days. And so there was no way he was going up aloft. And I asked him, I think in the morning, I said, you know, we'll go up the mast a bit later on. And after lunch, he went up by himself. He didn't tell me. I didn't know he was going up. And what happened, he got up to this sort of spot where this person is here, and it's sort of a bit of an overhang, and he couldn't hold on, and he actually fell down. You can see how he broke through all these. And because this is on a bit of an angle, he was very fortunate. He didn't land on the deck. It actually sort of projected him into the water. I was actually quite close to where it all happened. He didn't make a sound on the way down. So, of course, he ended up in the water. We were sailing at the time, and he was injured. So it was during the day, and an interesting thing that they have alarms that get pushed, different dash whatever. Anyway, there was some confusion because half the crew came up with their life jackets on, thinking that it was we're abandoning ship or something, as opposed to a man overboard. So they quickly got the sort of the rib, the inflatable craft over, and were able to pick him up. We weren't going that fast, and of course, not being at night time, it was in his favour. He was actually able to walk downstairs or down below afterwards, but he was actually really badly injured. A lot of bones, really bad rope burn, and anyway, so at that point we started motoring, and we motored to St Helena, which might have been about 3 days away. So St Helena, as you saw, is just a dot in the middle of the ocean. He was actually from South Africa. And we just left him there. We took him to hospital, and and I think at that time St Helena didn't have an airport, so we had to wait for the supply ship to come through and take him back to Cape Town. But this was pre-internet and emails, so don't really know what happened to him after that. So we got to St Helena. If I could see the chat, you could probably see if anyone knows what this building is at all. It's kind of had a famous resident. Any French people would know it was where Napoleon was exiled to. So he was exiled to Saint Helena for a while, and he actually did pass away there, and that's his grave. Although his body's no longer there, he was taken back to Paris. So or France, I mean. So that was it. We did a bit of a tour around there, and Saint Helena, it was quite an interesting place. As you can imagine, there was I don't know, not too many bloodlines, shall we say? Yeah. So So then we went to St Helena. We probably had a couple of days there, and then off to the next stop, which was Ascension Island, which took 5 days. And once again, quite good speed, 7.5 knots. So pretty good trade wind sailing. Just going to highlight that you'll see that this is like this tuna, and it followed us for days. And the Polish, they're very known for their fishing. They love their fishing. So the fact that this fish was following us, because what it was doing, it was, as we were sailing along, we were disturbing other fish, and so it would go and catch fish. So it really liked us. But the Polish guys, they were beside themselves, and so they were trying every possible method to catch this fish, creating harpoons and things like that. But they never did catch it. I think they got close once. But anyway, that was some good entertainment as we went along there. So we then got to Ascension Island. It's a bit of a military base for the Americans. You can sort of see here, it's got the US Air Force. It's a Dodge car. I remember going to a bar there, and you had to use US dollars, and we were drinking Budweiser. So it was all kind of bizarre. It was sort of like this little bit of America stuck out in the middle of the Atlantic. And I think the British also used it to do work with the Falklands as well. So that was a part of that. So we didn't have long there. We weren't allowed to stay there for very long. I do remember people swimming off the boat. There was sort of like piranha fish. And then there was one guy in the water, and we threw bread all around him, and the piranha fish came in, and I've never seen someone jump so fast. So that was pretty interesting. So then we left Ascension Island, and the big thing about this is crossing the equator. And we did actually have a GPS, and of course the flash went off just as we crossed the equator, but that's why it's all the zeros there. So what happens when you cross the equator? If you haven't crossed the equator before, then there's a ceremony you go through through Neptune. So there's King Neptune, and he's offside of there, and we've got the wizard. He's got his sextant there, and you then have to approach and see if you've got permission to cross the equator. And this is just a really good opportunity for the crew to, and particularly all the cooks, to get all the old food and oil and stuff like that, and they were just sort of really they made us drink all this Polish spirits and stuff like that, and really awful sort of things in there. And so it was quite an experience that we went through. So, but it's a really good sort of ceremony that you go through to crossing the line. Be interested here at the end if anyone else has crossed the line as well. At the end of it, you get a certificate, a diploma of crossing across there, and you can see mine's on the left and Luke's is on the right there, and you're given a name. And so my name is Haydar, and Luke's is Rigil, and I did the little thing in that. Haydar, it's named after, I was named after a star visible. It's the second brightest star in the Centaurus constellation, which I thought that was really nice until I found that Rigel is actually the brightest star. So they actually thought Luke was actually more important than me. So I was, I didn't know that until I checked that one in there. But that's a really nice little thing that we went through there. Going from Ascension Island to the Azores, 24 days. You just get into a real routine, no news or anything like that. You're just going through all the different things, reading books on the thing there. As I said before, it's like a delivery trip. So we did take alcohol on board, which is kind of rare to be able to, on a ship like this, to go and have drinks. And we have sort of like a sundowner each night. And certainly going off Africa, I remember the red dust coming off. We were getting off like the Sahara. There would be a lot of red dust. These ropes are always red anyway, but there was a lot of extra sort of red on there. So that was a really nice journey across there, and we managed to keep a bit of wind sailing through there. Check the chat. Okay, and someone, Colin Orchard, he actually does. Do I speak Polish? No, I don't. I did actually. I borrowed a book from the Cape Town Library about Poland, and I just didn't hand it back. So I think if I ever went back to Cape Town, they'd have my name on a list, I think. So we'll have to see. So we got to the Azores, which is a Polish set of islands, which we saw out in the middle there. And we tied up here. You can see a lot of signs along the side there. Now, these were, each time someone turned up there, each ship would make a painting of their ship. And unfortunately, I couldn't find the photo that we did. Certainly the Polish guys were very keen, and they made up a really nice little picture of that. So that's, you can see how Pagoria looks. It's about 150, it's about 55 meters long. And it's actually got a very tall mast. We've only generally got the front mast in there. But you can see where we can stand up on those, up on the yards there as well. So yeah, plenty of sailing area. I'll just go on now. Like I said, before the internet, this is pretty good. I thought, hadn't spoken to my parents for probably a couple of months at this time, and I sent a postcard from the Azores, and all I said was, "We made it there." So that was the extent of the communication. So, and then after that, I didn't speak to them again until I got to East Germany. So that would be like another sort of 6 weeks or something after that. So just the level of communication that things was just very different in those days in there. So yeah, that's it. And that postcard is actually from a place called Cafe Sport. And of course, being sailors, first thing you do is you head to the local pub. And as I say, if you sail to Horta, which is in the Azores, and you don't visit Cafe Sport, you've not actually been to Horta. So I remember there being quite a good session, shall we say. And in fact, a lot of the other crew ended up going in there as well, including the skipper. And we all had to be back on board, I think, by 5 o'clock, and we all did that. But the skipper, the captain, he turned up very late, and he was drunk, and so he passed over command to the first mate, and not knowing that the first mate was drunk as well. So it was pretty crazy. And anyway, there was a storm coming, and we were lashing the boat down, lashing everything down, and it was a crazy decision to go out. We should have just stayed there for a couple of days. But you know, they wanted to leave, and so off we went. And as I said, we headed off into this storm, and you know, we're talking about a big vessel here, and you can see how the boat's leaning over. There's water going everywhere. Everything, all the hatches are all locked, and this went on for, I think, a couple of days. You know, cutlery and all the crockery was being broken, and really, you know, leaning the boat over. We didn't have much sail up at all. You can see, I don't think we had any of the other ones in there. You can sort of see the big engine area here. Did have a very good engine on it, and you can see that the person helming is got this sort of rope seat that he's locked into there, so that sort of hold you in there. And that's actually the a compass above it. It's got a mirror. That's how you work out where you're going. But it was a real case of hanging on for a couple of days there. And there's another. This was Kelly, and you can see the wave coming in the background there. That was yeah, quite an exciting couple of days. And then after that, it calmed off, and we continued on, and we went from the Azores to Kiel, 15 days, and that was including going through the English Channel. And I'm pretty sure we would have motored most of that way from then on. 263 miles. You get a feel, you know, of life sort of on board. Then we're into the Kiel Canal. Yeah, I think it's all the engine area, but yeah, none of this, no smoking or anything like that. That was the skipper there, and this was the engineer, who actually married Kelly, who you saw in an earlier picture there. So yeah, and he actually, I think, emigrated to Canada. So worked out pretty well for him. That was the Kiel Canal. The Kiel Canal's got a lot of really high bridges because it's permanent. It's sort of dividing the country. So there was other bridges that they actually had to lift up because we had such a high mast that they actually had to open up or close the road and lift up the bridge so that we could get through there. It's definitely under engine at this point here. Actually, yeah, trying to remember who's who in this. Yeah. And then we got to Kiel, and yeah, they've got a German submarine there, a U-boat, U995. So we went and had a look through that. What else did we do in Kiel? I think we went to the pub. You know, like all of these places, all I remember is that we went to a lot of pubs. But you know, that's true nautical sort of style, so no harm in that. And then we got into Szczecin after a few more 4 days, and you can sort of see there's the crew. They'd been away from home for quite some time at this time, so they were pretty happy to be. They were probably gone from home for over 6 months or so, I guess. So yeah, they were pretty keen to be home at that time. We got back in April, and it was cold. I just remember we left South Africa, and I didn't even have wet weather gear. I think we shared wet weather gear because, you know, being a backpacker, you're not going to carry sailing wet weather gear, so we shared stuff. And it was quite warm, but then we got here. It was so cold, and we were making gloves out of old bits of canvas and things like that. So I've probably never been as cold as I have except in Poland. It was freezing. Here's the extract from the logbook. So the total thing. This is sailed by the master. I was a midshipman. Total hours on engine 556. Hours under sail 697, and hours in harbours 185, and a total mileage of 8,000 nautical miles. If you want to, for those who are non-sailors, if you double that, it's about 16,000 kilometres, approximately there. So yeah, it was a couple of months that got us to there. So then the ship, as I said, the class afloat had stopped, didn't need the boat anymore. Here's an example of what Poland looked like. He was my watch officer, the professor. I was very lucky to have him. He was really good. But just to give you an idea, Poland in 1992 was just coming out of being a communist country. So it was really grey, and I just remember it being grey, and not that I won't say advanced, but you can see the types of cars and things that they had there. I spent the next probably couple of weeks or so, 3 weeks, traveling around Poland. Luke and I sort of went our own sort of way at this time. I sort of went off, but we ended up meeting up again in London. So sort of travelled around Poland. I do remember the older people were really sort of set in their ways, and I remember going to one place, and there's this young teenagers, and they were playing U2 songs, and I could just see that was the future of the country coming through, and they were all wearing their Western clothes and things like that. So it's interesting. Got very excited preparing for this presentation, because I found some old Polish zloty, and I think I've got 550 of it, and I worked out, oh, well, that's about 200 Australian dollars. I was getting really excited. But then I did a little bit more research. Our old Polish bank was worth anything. In 1995, they dropped 4 zeros from its national currency, and then no longer a means of payment. They've lost all monetary value. So I can't do anything with them. But like my cousin will tell you, he can't believe that I didn't spend that money. So yeah, it was interesting that I kept that. I don't know, I can't remember how much things cost, but it certainly was. It was coming out of that the communist sort of time. So here's a picture of Concordia. As I said, it was got that Canadian class afloat that they were, and a bigger ship, and that was just being completed when we turned up. And in fact, I was looking into maybe doing some sailing on it, but I don't think the timing worked out, and so forth. But an interesting thing happened to Concordia. 48 rescued. It actually sank. It sank off Brazil. 48 students plus crew. They were in life rafts for 2 days, and it sank in about 15 minutes. It had a big squall, and it just knocked it over on its side. And it was amazing that they all survived that one and got out of that one. So yeah, the Concordia. They have actually built another boat, which is actually still functioning in there. Yeah, and yeah, so the connection to Hobson's Bay Yacht Club. Luke is from Melbourne, and so he used to sail on Stiletto, and a lot of Hobson's Bay members would know Stiletto, Rex Palmer. Well, and I in Perth used to sail on a boat called Sharinka, and the person who built Sharinka, Ross, he also used to own Stiletto, and they always used to talk about this previous boat that they had, a fairly unique boat. And both yachts were built by Ross, and he often talked about his first yacht, Stiletto. And so when I moved to Melbourne in 1995, and I kept in contact with with Luke, because he lived in the western suburbs at the time in Spotswood, and he introduced me to Rex at Hobson's Bay, and so I started sailing out of Hobson's Bay, and yeah, here we are. That's how I end up sailing at Hobson's Bay and not another club. So Luke's to blame. Yeah. So I'll just sort of that's the story of the tall ships in there. And as I mentioned, Luke is on there. Luke, he was on a different watch. But any other stories you had, Luke? I know there was an occasion where the captain was, I think it might have been after the Azores, he was running around the decks with the axe. And
it was actually the crossing of the line equator ceremony.
Okay.
So there were drinks after that, and that was the captain was chasing the bosun with the axe.
Yeah. Now, obviously, he managed to keep one step ahead of him, but
the other really interesting story, and which was quite colourful, was the bosun Henu got pretty excited when we first went sailing on the first day charter from Cape Town, and that was pretty exciting for me because David said that I'd already sailed tall ships, and the first thing I had to do was climb the mast. But and then I was climbing the mast, working out what to do under Dave's instruction, and the bosun, instead of going down to the next level, once he'd set the sail, he actually, you can see it sometimes in old TV stories and stuff like that, but he slid down the sail on the outside edge to go from one yard arm to the next.
Yeah.
Pretty spectacular, but he did get told off by the captain for doing it.
Yeah, and I know we had harnesses. I don't know if we used them that much. I can't really recall, but yeah, it was certainly interesting times. And
you could use the harness on the yard arm.
Yeah.
But the critical point where it wasn't set up was when you were doing the cross tree, which is where that guy fell.
Yeah. And sort of the food on board was, I think a lot of Polish soup, and it was all, unfortunately it's 30 years ago, so I can't remember as much about it, but it's been great that I've kept really close friends with Luke as a result of that. And like I said, we end up back in London, and then after I end up back in, I kept on backpacking for about 3 years, and then I end up back in Perth, and then just through circumstance, I end up in Melbourne, and that's where Luke was living in Spotswood. So I ended up buying a place in Spotswood, and then a month later he moved to Malakuta. So so that was interesting. Yeah. So Maria Proudlock, who is Polish, says in 1993 she would spend half a million zloty on a Saturday at the local market. So that's probably why I kept 550 zloty. I probably couldn't spend it on anything on there as well. So it was just a really good, just an opportunity. It just happened to be that I saw the ad about the boat, and I thought, well, here's an opportunity. Let's go. And I knew that tall ships always need lots of crew on board, and particularly ones that they don't have to pay. So being a backpacker, you're not worried about earning money. You're just worried more about not spending money. So but certainly our time in Cape Town on board was good fun, and I certainly got a lot of fondness for Polish people as a consequence of that trip. It's a hard language. We did try. I think in Poland, and I don't know if Luke, were you with me, but we ended up going to, they don't have like bars like we do here. It would be like a basement in someone's house, and I never spoke as good Polish as I did that time in that basement bar. So well, that's what I thought I was anyway. Yeah. So any questions? You can unmute yourself if you've got any questions about the trip.
So did they make you do any navigating, David, or was that all taken care of?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really. because we're such long legs and stuff, there wasn't a huge amount of navigation. We did do some study on learning the
Celestial.
celestial, using the sextant. So because they had the classroom set up and so forth, so we did a bit of that. Wasn't a lot. We actually they did have that GPS in there, so that sort of got us through. I don't know how we spent the days that much. Yeah.
Sorry, David, did you wouldn't have had a digital camera then? So were these all slides that you took?
No, it was a film camera, and then I have been scanning them using a Google Photo Scan, so which came up pretty well actually. Yeah. So I've been dusting them all off and finding them all together. So hopefully you found it interesting. Yeah, Pagoria is still sailing. It's now part of the it's part of like a tool ship thing where they take people out for probably a week or so at a time. Tool ships, the idea behind tool ship sailing is to get young people out of their comfort zone. There's one in Perth called Lewin, which is what I spent a lot of time on. And yeah, by taking them out, up at night time, getting them cold, getting them away from their phones, all that kind of thing. That's the whole idea, and just getting them out of their comfort zone. So that's what the idea behind tall ship sailing is. Unfortunately, we don't have one in Melbourne. The Yarmouth Dopel might come into that. There's Young Endeavour as well, if you ever get a chance. So Pagoria is still based in Poland. It did get dismasted a while back. And Pagoria, so Leslie, the answer to that question, it was designed for that character building kind of sailing so we were sort of living in sort of like once we were in more bunks.
David, what length was the boat?
About 55 meters, 150 foot. So certainly it was a great way to get back to Europe. Cheaper than flying. The only thing is I already had bought a return flight, and I couldn't get the refund on that. So I was hoping to get a refund on that, but I couldn't do that. The boat's in Poland. So yeah.
I take it, David, you didn't meet Kerry on that trip. That was a bit later.
That was many probably would have been 8 years later that I met Kerry. Yeah. Do you want to know how many days it was?
No, I did see Luke with his arm around someone in one of those photos, though.
Just quietly, Luke had his arms around most of them at one point.
Okay, yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
David, John here. Did all those nights on Night Watch? Is that where your love of the stars came from and astronomy?
It was certainly interesting going from the southern hemisphere to the northern hemisphere, because there's a lot better stars in the southern hemisphere. But then when you get into the northern hemisphere, you've got the northern light, the polar star sort of thing. So yeah, that was certainly some good nights out there. Yeah, Luke wouldn't have seen all those because he only did day watch, I'm pretty sure. So.
No, we were 8 till 12 at night, so we did get a little bit of the night, and 8 to 12 in the morning. The luxury shift. Yeah,
I don't know how that all worked out. I remember, I think at one point I think maybe from the Azores, our watch rebelled and said we're going to do a different shift, and I think we ended up doing the 4 to 8, but there was a lot of angst as a result of that. Because everyone sort of got used to their sort of ways, but and they didn't want to change things. Yeah, so. Backpacking days, it was just, I don't think I had insurance or anything like that. You used to go to the post office to pick up your letters from the Poste Restante, I think it was. So we could have gone anywhere. So, and then going through after Poland, I went through East Germany, and that's where the Berlin Wall had come down just only a couple of years ago. Someone sold me a piece of it, but I'm not sure how authentic it is. It had a little bit of spray paint on it, so I thought that's close enough. But and then I ended up back in England, and I worked for Kentucky. So worked there for a bit, and yeah. Elizabeth's asking how many slept in a room. So all of the Polish crew would have probably had their own cabins, and then I would have, because the ship wasn't full, because we didn't have all the normal sort of students on there. So I think I shared a cabin with maybe 2 others. But yeah, we're really quite spaced out compared to what a normal sort of voyage would be in there. Yeah, but yeah, that was all good.
All right. Well, we'll probably cut you off there, David, if you want to get
Yeah,
to
the
footy,
footy's about to start.
you
Yeah,
managed to clock up 40 participants, so that's pretty good. You should be pleased with that.
yeah.
And thank you very much. It's fascinating. And yeah, definitely. Yeah, we all need to go out and do some adventures like that.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you know, it's just at that time in life is really the only sort of time that those kind of things are really become available, and you can just go with it. So and hitchhiking through South Africa, I don't think you'd do that now.
That's off the cards, isn't it?
Yeah, you'd only do it for a short time. Yeah, so yeah, cool.
All right, good on you, David. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Good evening,
Yeah,
folks. Have a
thanks,
nice
David.
weekend.
Great talk. Thanks, David.
okay, cheers.
Monday.
See you
Thank
later.
you.
Cheers.
Hope you enjoyed it.
It's
We
great.
did.
It's very good.
It was good going through the old photos and getting them into some sort of order as well.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, and a lot of my family and friends are joining in. They probably hadn't heard the full story before. So
Thanks, David. Really interesting.
cheers. I just wish I had a more film on the camera. I would have taken a few more photos. I don't think Luke had a camera, did you, Luke?